When I start talking about Trump, I get too flustered in my head.
One thing we already know about Eminem is the fact he has never been the type to bite his tongue. He's built an entire career on saying the things other rappers were too scared to admit.
This motherfucker Donald Trump I can't stand.
Over the years, he has battled countless rappers, but only 6 ever made his most evil list. These aren't just rivals. These are people he's accused of betrayal, destruction, and even ties to hip-hop's darkest conspiracies. From personal attacks on his family to whispers about Tupac's death, Slim Shady didn't just call them out, he exposed them. And once you hear who made the list, you'll never look at the industry the same way again. Let's begin with number 1, Suge Knight. When you hear the word evil in hip-hop, one name towers above the rest: Suge Knight. The former Death Row Records CEO was more than just a music executive. He was the embodiment of fear in the rap game. Suge wasn't simply running a label. He was running an empire built on intimidation, violence, and an aura that made even the toughest rappers tread carefully. For Eminem, his connection to Suge came indirectly, but the shadow was always there. To understand why M would see Suge as a toxic force, you have to rewind to the late 90s. Eminem was rising fast under the wing of Dr. Dre, who had just broken free from death row after years of explosive battles with Suge. Death Row, once the crown jewel of hip-hop thanks to Dre, Snoop Dogg, and Tupac, was unraveling. Its downfall was soaked in violence, lawsuits, and Suge's notorious strong-arm tactics. Suge wasn't pleased watching Dre walk away and build Aftermath into a powerhouse. And since Eminem was Dre's star protege, he naturally inherited some of that heat. Eminem responded the only way he knew how, through his music. On tracks like Bitch Please II, M threw sharp jabs at Suge's crumbling empire, mocking the chaos and hinting that Suge's so-called reign of terror was more circus than dynasty. But M's disdain wasn't just lyrical banter. In interviews, he made it clear. Suge symbolized everything rotten about the industry: manipulation, corruption, and a willingness to use fear as currency. And M wasn't alone in that view. Legends like Snoop Dogg, Ice-T, and even producers behind the scenes admitted they lived in constant dread of crossing Suge. Stories of dangling rivals over hotel balconies, violent altercations, and courtroom drama only reinforced the myth of Suge as hip-hop's ultimate villain. So when Eminem put Suge Knight in the evil category, it wasn't hyperbole, it was acknowledgement. Suge was the boogeyman of the culture, a man whose power came not just from the artists he signed, but from the terror he spread. To Eminem and to much of the industry, Suge represented a nightmare dressed as a record executive. Next, we have number 2, Benzino. This wasn't just a beef, it was an all-out war, one that almost derailed Eminem's career at its peak. And unlike other rivalries that faded with time, this one left a scar on the culture. The root of it all? Envy, resentment, and an obsession with tearing Eminem down. Benzino wasn't just another rapper looking for clout. He was the co-owner of The Source, at one time the most influential hip-hop magazine in the world. In the early 2000s, that platform had the power to crown legends or bury careers. And Benzino chose to use it as his personal weapon against Eminem. Why? Because he couldn't stomach seeing a white rapper dominate a black art form with such authority. Instead of framing it as healthy debate, Benzino turned it into a vendetta. The evidence is undeniable. He plastered the Source covers and editorials with anti-Eminem narratives, questioning his authenticity and his right to even exist in the culture. He gave himself glowing reviews while tearing Eminem apart. And then he crossed the line from professional to personal. Benzino dragged Eminem's family into it, even his daughter Hailey, a move that made fans furious and solidified him as a villain in this story. Eminem, of course, fought back the only way he knew how, with bars. On The Sauce and Nail in the Coffin, he dismantled Benzino line by line, portraying him as desperate, bitter, and irrelevant. He compared Benzino to a parasite, someone who didn't build hip-hop but tried to leech off it while poisoning the well. Those tracks weren't just disses. They were career-defining takedowns that fans still quote to this day. And here's the kicker. It backfired on Benzino. The very smear campaign he launched to destroy Eminem ended up ruining his own reputation. Fans saw through the bias, the fake reviews, the petty attacks. Instead of dimming Eminem's light, it exposed Benzino's insecurity and tanked his credibility. To this day, that beef is remembered as one of the most lopsided in rap history. Eminem didn't just win, he obliterated him. But at the core of it, M's disdain runs deeper. To him, Benzino wasn't just a hater. He was someone who tried to poison an entire culture out of ego, resentment, and fear. And that's the kind of evil Eminem refuses to forgive. And now, at number 3, Donald Trump Jr. This one caught a lot of people off guard. When Eminem set his sights on the Trump family, he wasn't just dabbling in politics, he was making it deeply personal. The root cause of his hate was clear. To Eminem, the Trump dynasty, including Donald Trump Jr., embodied greed, manipulation, and the calculated division of America. For a rapper who built his career on giving voice to the voiceless, that image stood as everything he was against. Eminem has always painted himself as the underdog, the poor white kid from Detroit, who grew up surrounded by poverty, addiction, and neglect. His fans connected to him because he spoke their truth. But when he looked at the Trumps, especially Donald Jr., he saw the polar opposite. A man born into money, power, and privilege, yet using that influence not to uplift but to widen the gap between people. The beef first came to a boiling point during the Trump presidency. In 2017, Eminem unleashed The Storm, a freestyle at the BET Hip Hop Awards that ripped into Donald Trump Sr., calling him a racist, a divider, and a threat to the country. It was raw, unapologetic, and one of the most viral moments of Eminem's later career. But it didn't stop there. Donald Trump Jr. jumped into the conversation almost immediately, mocking Eminem on Twitter as irrelevant, desperate for attention, and out of touch. That jab struck a nerve, because it wasn't just a political disagreement, it was an attempt to belittle Eminem's credibility, the very thing he fought his whole career to defend. From that point, M doubled down. In interviews, stage rants, and even his album Revival, he made it clear. His disgust wasn't limited to Trump Sr. It extended to the entire family, including Trump Jr. To Eminem, Donald Jr. was a living symbol of inherited arrogance, someone who never had to struggle, yet acted as if he understood the lives of working-class Americans. In M's eyes, that hypocrisy was unforgivable. Fans and critics split right down the middle. Some praised Eminem for taking such a bold stance in an industry where most artists avoid politics for fear of alienating listeners. Others accused him of going too far, of letting politics overshadow his music. But for Slim Shady, it was never about left versus right. It was about morality. It was about using his platform to call out what he saw as corruption, exploitation, and abuse of power. And that's where Donald Trump Jr. fit into the picture. He wasn't just the son of a controversial president, he was a participant, someone who amplified the same divisive rhetoric that Eminem despised. To M, Trump Jr. represented everything wrong with power unchecked. Greed without empathy, privilege without responsibility, and influence without accountability. So when Eminem labeled the Trumps as evil, it wasn't hyperbole. It was his way of saying they stood as a threat to the very communities he came from. He further said Trump is brainwashing them. For him, this wasn't politics. It was survival. It was good versus evil. And Donald Trump Jr. was firmly on the wrong side of that line. And now, at number 4, Jermaine Dupri. This one often slips under the radar when people talk about Eminem's long list of enemies. But make no mistake, Eminem had real smoke for Jermaine Dupri. And like many of his feuds, this one wasn't born out of thin air. It was about loyalty, respect, and the politics of hip-hop's golden era. Back in the early 2000s, Jermaine Dupri was one of the most powerful producers in the industry. He had built So So Def into a brand, working with huge artists like Bow Wow, Usher, and Mariah Carey. On the surface, JD was a mogul who helped shape R&B, and hip-hop crossover success. But behind the scenes, rumors started swirling that he had rubbed Dr. Dre and Snoop Dogg the wrong way. Allegedly, Jermaine was trying to position himself as the #1 producer in the game, a title that Dre had long been respected for. That claim alone was enough to light sparks. Now, Eminem's relationship with Dr. Dre wasn't just business, it was family. Dre discovered him, vouched for him, and helped him break into a world where a white rapper from Detroit wasn't exactly welcomed with open arms. That kind of loyalty runs deep. So when Jermaine Dupri made moves that Dre and Snoop saw as disrespectful, Eminem was never going to stay silent. The clearest evidence of this beef came on The Eminem Show, with the track Say What You Say. Eminem didn't just throw subliminals, he called Jermaine out by name. The bars dripped with venom, mocking JD's credibility and accusing him of playing industry politics instead of focusing on artistry. For M, Jermaine represented something he despised: the slick, behind-the-scenes power games that could tear down legacies without ever firing a public shot. Fans dissected those lyrics endlessly, and the speculation grew. Was Dupri really trying to challenge Dre's legacy? Was he maneuvering in boardrooms to outshine hip-hop's elder statesmen? Whether those rumors were exaggerated or not, Eminem clearly believed there was truth to them. And when Eminem believes you've disrespected his circle, you're automatically marked as an enemy. What makes this beef interesting is how different it was from his wars with people like Suge Knight or Benzino. Suge was about fear and violence. Benzino was about ego and public humiliation. But Jermaine? To Eminem, he symbolized a quieter kind of threat, sneaky, backdoor scheming that was just as poisonous, if not more dangerous, because it could shift the power balance of the entire industry without anyone noticing. Jermaine Dupri himself never fanned the flames much. In interviews, he downplayed the whole situation, brushing it off as nothing more than rap bravado. But fans could feel the tension. Eminem's words carried weight. And the fact that he devoted bars on a multi-platinum album to JD showed just how seriously he took the perceived slight. For Slim Shady, it always comes back to loyalty. And in his world, anyone who crosses Dr. Dre, whether in the streets, the studio, or the boardroom, lands firmly in the enemy category. Jermaine Dupri may not have been the loudest or most obvious villain, but in Eminem's eyes, that almost made him more dangerous. Because to M, the slick operators who smile in your face while plotting behind your back are just another shade of evil. And as history shows, Slim Shady has never let evil slide without putting it on wax. Next we have number 5, Machine Gun Kelly. Now this one is legendary, not just for the beef itself, but for how it erupted across the hip-hop world and became one of the most talked about clashes of the decade. And like so many of Eminem's feuds, it started with a single moment of disrespect. The cause of hate was simple, but devastating. Back in 2012, Machine Gun Kelly made a controversial comment about Eminem's daughter Hailey, who at the time was still underage. He tweeted that she was hot as a line that instantly crossed a boundary Eminem has made crystal clear from day one. Family is off limits. That one slip set off a chain reaction that would follow MGK for the rest of his career. At first, M stayed quiet. But silence doesn't mean forgiveness. In Slim Shady's world, it usually means he's loading up. 6 years later, in 2018, the storm hit. Eminem dropped his surprise album, Kamikaze, and tucked inside was Not Alike, a scathing track that took direct aim at MGK. Line by line, M dismantled him, clowning his image, mocking his style, and branding him a second-rate mumble rapper. The shot landed so hard because M wasn't just defending himself, he was protecting his daughter, his family, his honor. But if Not Alike was the warning shot, what came next was the execution. MGK responded with his diss track, Rap Devil, a bold attempt to swing back at the rap god. To MGK's credit, it was sharp, aggressive, and earned him attention he had never experienced before. He mocked Eminem's age, called him bitter, and tried to paint him as a fading legend. For a moment, it seemed like he had stirred up something fresh in the rap game. Then Eminem dropped Killshot, and the world stopped. Killshot wasn't just a diss track, it was a lyrical obliteration. Eminem dissected MGK's entire career, calling him a stan, accusing him of living in M's shadow, and mocking his desperate attempts to gain clout. One of the most cutting bars? How you gonna name yourself after a damn gun and have a man bun? It was ruthless, funny, and humiliating all at once. But beyond the jokes, M delivered a deeper blow. He made it clear MGK would never be his equal, no matter how hard he tried. The impact was immediate. Killshot broke records on YouTube, racking up millions of views within hours. Fans flooded Twitter, Reddit, and hip-hop forums, declaring it one of the most lopsided battles in rap history. While some gave MGK credit for stepping into the ring, the consensus was clear. Eminem had ended him. Even major outlets like Billboard and Complex ran pieces about how devastating the track was. And the fallout? It was brutal. MGK's rap credibility never recovered. Almost immediately after the feud, he began pivoting away from hip-hop and into pop-punk, reinventing himself with albums like Tickets to My Downfall. While he found success in that lane, fans could never quite forget how thoroughly he'd been dismantled in the rap arena. To this day, whenever MGK's name is brought up in hip-hop circles, someone inevitably mentions Killshot. It's like a scar he can't shake. For Eminem, this battle was personal in a way most of his beefs aren't. He went ahead to put him in his place by saying he is now an enemy.
But I also don't want to make him bigger. Do you know what I'm saying?
Yeah.
Because now, enemy.
It wasn't about industry politics like with Jermaine Dupri. It wasn't about control and power like with Suge Knight. It wasn't even about ego like with Benzino. This was about family. And if there's one universal truth about Eminem, it's that his daughter is untouchable. Crossing that line made MGK more than just another rival. It made him someone Slim Shady wanted to erase completely. Calling MGK evil in this context isn't about painting him as a criminal mastermind or a villain like Suge Knight. It's about something simpler, and in some ways, more dangerous. Disrespect. In Eminem's world, disrespecting his daughter, especially when she was underage, is the ultimate evil. And unlike other battles, where he might eventually let things cool off, this one stuck. The proof is everywhere. From the way Killshot still trends years later, to the fact that MGK abandoned rap altogether, this wasn't just a battle, it was a public execution. Eminem made sure MGK's mistake would be immortalized in hip-hop history, a permanent reminder of what happens when you step into Slim Shady's world and cross the one line he never forgives. And that's why this feud isn't just remembered as a rap beef, it's remembered as a turning point, a moment where Eminem showed that even in his 40s, he could defend his throne and his family with such precision and fury that no one dared to follow MGK down that same path again. And finally, at number 6, Sean Diddy Combs. This is the one that might just be the darkest of all, because unlike Eminem's other beefs, which were out in the open with diss tracks, interviews, and obvious back and forth shots, his disdain for Diddy has always been more subtle, more whispered, and much more sinister. The cause of hate here doesn't come from one public blowup like Benzino's smear campaign, or one reckless tweet like MGK's comment about Hailey. No, this one runs deep in conspiracy, speculation, and the shadows of hip-hop history. Diddy has long been one of the most polarizing figures in the industry, praised as a mogul who built Bad Boy Records into a powerhouse, but also haunted by accusations of manipulation, exploitation, and darker secrets that seem to follow him no matter where he goes. And Eminem, being who he is, has never been afraid to shine a light on those shadows. Over the years, M has slipped in jabs that tied Diddy to some of the ugliest stories in hip-hop, but the real explosion came with Eminem's 2024 album, The Death of Slim Shady, Coup de Grace. On it, Slim didn't just throw shade, he threw fire. M accused Diddy of being tangled up in industry schemes, planting bombs metaphorically and possibly literally in the careers of others. He even dropped a chilling bar that seemed to hint at Diddy's name being connected to the tragic death of Tupac Shakur. Now let's be clear here, none of this is proven. These are allegations wrapped in lyrics, designed to provoke, unsettle, and stir up old suspicions. But here's the thing, those suspicions didn't come out of nowhere. For decades, whispers in the hip-hop world have linked Diddy to conspiracies around Tupac's murder, the East Coast-West Coast feud, and the toxic industry culture of the 90s. Books, documentaries, and even FBI files have all floated theories, none confirmed, all controversial. So when Eminem puts Diddy's name in that mix, he's not inventing something new. He's amplifying the darkest rumors that have been there all along. The impact was explosive. Fans flooded social media after the album dropped. Some praised Eminem for being bold enough to say what others wouldn't dare put on wax. They saw it as Slim Shady doing what he's always done, best being the voice that cuts through industry silence and forces uncomfortable conversations. Others, though, accused him of crossing a line, arguing that tying Diddy's name to Tupac's death without proof was reckless and cruel. But that's the Slim Shady formula, isn't it? He's never been about playing it safe. From mocking pop stars in the early 2000s to tearing into presidents, M has always thrived on taking the unspeakable and saying it out loud. To him, Diddy represents something bigger than just one man. He's the embodiment of what M sees as evil in hip-hop: power abused behind the scenes, secrets buried under layers of money and fame, and the ability to silence anyone who questions the narrative. Think about the contrast. Eminem has spent his career positioning himself as the outsider, the underdog, the guy who came from nothing and fought his way to the top with nothing but rhymes. Diddy, on the other hand, has been painted fairly or not as the insider, the puppet master, the man pulling strings in boardrooms while others suffered the consequences. It's almost poetic that M, the self-proclaimed rap god, would eventually set his sights on one of the most untouchable moguls in the game. And here's the kicker: whether the allegations are true or not almost doesn't matter. What matters is perception. And in Eminem's eyes, Diddy isn't just another rival or critic. He's something darker. He's the specter of greed, corruption, and betrayal that has haunted hip-hop since its golden era. That's why Slim included him in this evil list. Because to M, it's not just about personal beef. It's about exposing the rot at the very heart of the industry he loves. So when Eminem put Diddy's name next to those chilling bars, it wasn't just shock value, it was a declaration. In Slim Shady's eyes, Sean Diddy Combs isn't just controversial, he's one of the most evil figures to ever touch hip-hop. So here we are. 6 names, 6 stories of betrayal, bitterness, and boundary crossing that show exactly why Eminem doesn't throw around the word evil lightly. Suge Knight, the bully of the business. Benzino, the bitter gatekeeper. Donald Trump Jr., the face of arrogance and privilege. Jermaine Dupri, the slick schemer. MGK, the line crosser who went after family. And Diddy, the shadowy mogul tied to some of the darkest whispers in the game. And just when you think that's the end of it, here's the chilling part. Eminem has hinted time and time again that these these aren't the only names on his list. He's said it in interviews. He's teased it in lyrics. There are more people he considers enemies, people whose actions he sees as flat out evil. But he's saving those stories, waiting for the right moment to expose them. The real question now is this: if these 6 names are just the beginning, who else is on Slim Shady's list? And how deep does the darkness in hip-hop really go?